Hey everyone, before we get into it today, if you've ever thought about starting your own podcast or taking your current one to the next level, you have to check out Podigy Podcast. They didn't just help us launch this show, which we need a lot of help with. They made it look and sound amazing with custom artwork, killer music, and they guided us through the launching of the show step by step. Now they handle everything for us, editing, producing, you name it. All we do is hit record and they do the rest. Trust me. If you're serious about podcasting, you need them in your corner. Click the link in the show notes to schedule a free one-on-one podcast game plan session with them. You won't be sorry. Hey, welcome to the Path Podcast that provides transformative insights for authentic success. My name is Chris Weiss, and together with my partners, Stuart Ferguson and Toby Quinton, we make up True Path Consulting, where our mission is to maximize executive performance and drive personal growth by guiding leaders on a journey of self-fulfillment and true success. Hey, I wanted to thank you once again for pressing play on whatever device you're listening to us on today. It means a ton to us that you're here. Our hope is that through our stories and interviews that you'll find something within yourself, something that moves you to get curious and possibly something that triggers you to take action in your life. You see, the goal of this podcast and in our coaching partnerships is to help people find their ideal selves without needing the motivation of that personal or professional crisis. We'll bring up topics and curate discussions that will help you take action to find out how you're showing up in the roles that are or should be a priority in your life, ultimately helping you paint the picture of who you want to be and walking with you to figure out what the heck's getting in your way from becoming your ideal self. We only get one shot at this awesome thing called life, so let's stop being okay with being miserably comfortable and instead be more intentional in following a path of meaning and purpose. With that being said, I'd like to more formally welcome in my partners that are going on this journey with us. Mr. Toby Quinton, how are you, buddy?
I'm good, man. Good to see you. I'm looking forward to today's discussion, but more importantly, just to check in. Things are good. I've been traveling quite a bit with work and been to some beautiful places, but I'll tell you what, the old climate change, and not to get overly political right out of the gates, but I mean the turbulence flying around has been insane. But all in all, though, it's been good to get out and about, and just been away from home a little bit longer than I wanted to. So I'm glad that I'm home right now. I'm glad to be spending the next hour or so with you guys.
Awesome, man. Home sweet home, baby. I got stuck in Indianapolis the other day because that weather changes and stuff. And I decided instead of getting home at 1:30 in the morning, I just rent a car and drive 6.5 hours. So I had a lot of me time. I listened to this awesome podcast called The Path. Yeah. Oh yeah, it was good.
You heard of it?
Yeah. Hey Stu, how about you, buddy?
I'm great. I'm doing really well. We're in the final days of summer. For my daughter, heads back to college at the end of this week. So that's always, I don't know about you all. Chris, I know you've got some college age kids, but what's interesting is when they first get to the house, there's always turmoil, kind of readjustment. And then like the week before they leave, at least in our family, there's more turmoil. So we're like day 2 of the separation between my daughter and my wife and myself. It's always fun. It's always fun. Yeah. So we got dinner last night and, we were sitting there and I was like, hey, bud, we'd like to get a little more time with you before you head back to school. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I'd like to be able to give you more time, but right now, Dad, my social life is just at a level that I'm having a hard time keeping up with that. And I was like, all right, good dinner, bud. We'll catch up. We'll catch up when we get back to school.
How about you pick up the dinner tab?
Yeah, exactly. Keep paying the tab and can we get dessert? But all jokes aside, it's been an awesome summer with her. She's on the verge of graduating college and going through all the reflection and deep thinking about life. Like the adulting is starting to become a real thing. So she's trying to figure out, where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? And all that stuff. So to be present, to be within proximity of her, I've just gotten to have some unbelievable conversations. So I'm ready for her to go back. She's ready to go back. And I think we're going to have a really good school year. So thanks for asking, but all is good here.
Good, man. Really cool. Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Next week, Aiden goes back, and Joy and I are heading down Wednesday, and he didn't want us to go. He's got his car now. He's got his own apartment. He's going a night before to see his, hang out with his girlfriend, whatever, right? And it's like, Mom, Dad, no, I'm good. And they haven't talked about like plates or nothing. The 4 dudes that have they're just like, oh, we'll do it when we get there. And we're like, okay. And Mom's going nuts. She's like, that's not how we roll. Like, this is like, I need a spreadsheet. What do I need to bring? What do the other kids bring? And it's none of that. So I'm just trying to get Mom to surrender a little bit. Something we're going to talk about today. Cool. And, it hasn't been that easy to get her to do that. But then on the other hand, I have, this morning was awesome. It's Monday and we're recording on a Monday, and my 2 other boys are in high school together for the first time. So I have a senior and a freshman, and they started soccer tryouts today. Ooh. So they were up at 5:30 because they have to be at the field at 6:30. And my son's the captain, so he's like, I got to be there even more early. And so but they were up like literally. I rolled down at 5:45 just to kind of be a part of it, see if they needed anything. And the energy was palpable. I mean, it was awesome. And they were so excited and nervous, but excited and stuff. So I got to enjoy that with them. And then they got their teachers today and all that. So there's that buzz going around my house, which is just really cool. And I just love this time of year, the fall. I got to go for a nice run this morning, and it was like 58 degrees. It was just awesome, man. So yeah, so good day. Everything's kind of going okay.
6 more months before 50 show up in Phoenix.
I know. Yeah, you got to take it.
Only
yeah,
60 degrees warmer than that 58 right now.
Yeah. Hey, that's your fault, dude. You live in
Phoenix. I know.
Yeah.
Crimea River.
It's warm. It's what is it? It's
a dry heat. It's a very dry
heat. Yeah.
The shade, it's nice.
Yeah, whatever. So, well, hey, again, thanks for, I'm excited about today. Especially, this topic, the topic that we wanted to talk about is surrender. And, it's an interesting topic to talk about because, I looked up some of the definitions in the dictionary, just become a little prepared. And it's a lot of like giving up, and quitting and things like that. And it's especially in our culture, like surrendering is a negative thing. And I've seen nothing but the opposite of that, in my life. And when I left our company, I decided to say yes to everything. And that was only because as a VP, I had to say no to everything when I was working because I was so busy and didn't have time for anything. And I was so important, right? That I just had to say no to everything for my own sanity and my own well-being. And I lost some relationships that way. I lost touch with people that way. It didn't feel great. Like I like to be engaged. I like to be involved. So I decided that when I was done working, I was just going to say yes to everything and see where it took me. And in doing so, I took a class and a woman in my class, introduced me to Michael Singer. And Michael Singer is a gentleman that, he wrote Untethered Soul. And I got on his podcast, I listened to his podcast and stuff. And the concept is how he breaks it down is just, revolves around the idea of letting go of personal resistance and accepting life as it unfolds. And that's kind of hokey, right? It's kind of like, oh yeah, and it's a lot easier said than done, right? When you got shit going on in your life and you're in it, it is tough to surrender. I remember, Stu, and you were, transitioning out of the company, and I was in a different place because I already kind of went through the transition and I was excited, and I kept being like, dude, you just got to surrender to it, Stu, And I remember you being like, hey, dude, if you tell me to surrender one more time, I'm going to punch you in the, and I remember seeing the look, and I'm like, all right, maybe I should hold off the surrender. But for me, it's allowed me to just let go of my ego, kind of let go of what everybody's kind of always told me I needed to do, and just kind of follow my own path and follow, like, it sounds hokey, but what the universe or world kind of presents in front of me. And since then, it's just opened up so many doors for me. I had, coffee with a woman that I lost touch with, and she introduced me to my publisher, who has had like an unbelievable, impact on my life and writing my book and being my psychiatrist / publisher half the time. It's introduced me to investment opportunities. It's introduced me to creating this going on this path with you guys. It's just introduced so many different things, and it's brought a rejuvenation back to my life and an excitement back to my life. Cause it's just like, I'm not gripping it that tight anymore. You know, I'm just kind of, and I'm not haphazard with it. I'm not reckless. I'm not, you know, I'm still intentional and I'm still, motivated and I still have goals and all that other stuff. But there's just an ease to me where, I'd like to say I'm a little bit better and more fun to be around. I think my kids would tell you that. And I think Joy would tell you that. So anyway, I just would love to get your guys' perspective. You guys know this impact that it's had on me. I'd love to get the perspective from you guys. Stuart, like you and I have kind of gone through this a little bit together. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, before I get into that, I just want to, the Michael Singer reference just resonate with me. And I love one of his quotes, and it goes back to what you just said. And it says, the only thing you have to do is stop being afraid of the inner experience that you are having. Like when it talks about that surrendering, the only thing you have to do is stop being afraid of the inner experience that you're having. Mm-hmm. And that concept of surrendering is letting all of that kind of untangling, for a lack of a better term, but that ability to just let it play out. For me, I don't think surrender, when you introduced that word to me, I wasn't mentally ready for it and emotionally ready for it. But two, it felt like giving up. Mm-hmm. It felt like, when you surrender, you're detaching your identity from the outcome. Like there was all this fear-driven belief systems around surrendering. And, what I kept coming back to was I had to, like, the amount of critical thinking that was going on during that period of time, on top of I'm already hard on myself in life, just when I wake up in the morning. And then all of the unexpected expectations of others that were either perceived or real, carrying all that, it was just so heavy. It was almost impossible to breathe. And so I almost found myself being forced to surrender some things and just say, for lack of a better term, fuck it. Like it's going to be what it is. Yeah. I've got to let it play out. But a couple of things is trust in the process. Like I had to trust that my life, all 52 years, had not been controlled by me. Like I had to come to the realization that every decision that's been made for 52 years was not well planned and intentional. A lot of it was some luck and some belief in myself. And so that ability to kind of trust in life's process, I wrote this down and I'll kick it over to Toby here in a second, but surrendering involves cultivating trust in life's process, even when the path ahead is unclear. It's about believing that life has a way of working out, often in the ways that are beyond our current understanding. And like when I'm sitting there journaling, I'm like, this is a great example. When I left my career, I had in my mind, because of ego, that there were all these expectations on me that were manufactured on what I should go do next. Should I go be a president of a big company? Should I go be in a VC? Should I go do private equity? And everybody that called me wouldn't ask me, hey, are you going to take some time and kind of, other than you two, but everybody else was like, hey man, I got this connection. And it was all about what's the biggest job I can attach my identity to when I leave here. And I spent a good month or two interviewing, talking to people. And what I started to realize was none of this was for me. All of this was a byproduct of trying to manage others' expectations and, more importantly, my ego. So my point to bringing all this up was there had to come a place of saying, I've got to let things play out. And when I stopped controlling, two very dear friends of mine re-entered into my life, and we're building a wonderful company that I knew in my heart I wanted to be a part of. And if I would have tried to control everything and run, I would have missed this. And so the power of letting things play out and trusting the process is another form of surrendering. And that belief and trust in yourself is just something that I've had to rekindle. And now I've got it. I have a lot more faith in me and in life. That intentionality doesn't always have to come with so much control.
Yeah, just some feedback. You're more fun to be around. this version of Stu. It's been fun. With you.
My wife says the same thing. My parents, everybody, my children. Yeah, it was a real joy for a good chunk of time.
No, all joking aside, it's like that. Like I got to see, presidential Stu that had the literally the weight of the world on his shoulders. And I remember like talking to you and being like, dude, this can't be what it's supposed to be like, bro. Like for you, like I'm worried about you. And now to see you just kind of like letting it all unfold in front of you, it's just been, as one of your good friends, man, it has been awesome to watch.
I appreciate it. But hey, a lot of that has to do with you and Toby and, other people that have had the courage enough to say, you're better than you think you are. Like you've got to trust yourself. And, one person in particular that really went above and beyond was you, Chris, in that, even in the beginning of all of this and really trying to figure out who I was because my identity was so tied there. You created a very safe environment for friends out there that know somebody that's going through a tough time. That just providing a safe space to let them untangle from that is the best gift you can possibly give somebody. I'm telling you right now, because they're not their authentic self. They're vetting through and filtering through emotions of insecurity. And you and Toby provide a great atmosphere to be able to go through that. But in the same breath, I had to believe in myself. And so talking a lot of that out got me to remember who I am. So I appreciate all that.
You got it, man.
Timely.
Awesome. What about you, buddy?
Hey, yeah, great convo so far. It's just, Stu, thanks for sharing, man. That's such a powerful share there. And Chris, I love you walking in. And I know this is what we're about, the three of us, but walking in challenging concepts. And in this case, the word surrender. There's a lot of different things I was thinking about in preparation for our conversation today. And Chris, that article you sent, I thought was great. And a lot of the references you've made thus far about people and things you've read and things you've listened to and relationships with us and with other people have kind of helped with your own journey on this and path on this and perspective. The word, if it's uncomfortable for those listeners of ours to just even say, I think that's such an important point for all of us to make of why does it make you uncomfortable? What is it about that word that you believe it to mean? And really, what's your belief around surrendering? And that article, Chris, that you referenced, giving up versus surrendering. And I so know as, a performance coach and someone that works with people like you guys, executive levels and whatnot, this whole notion of giving up is really where we slide quickly to this concept of surrendering. And it's such a good, tension to create. Is it really giving up? Are we giving up when we surrender? And thinking about, I've heard a lot of people say things like, well, I'm not going to just let fate dictate my future. And Chris, you even referenced that just a minute ago. Like, I'm not just leaving everything to chance and just kind of laying back and hoping that the entire world works. I've got friends like that are like, yeah, I'll just land on my feet. And I'm like, well, you're probably going to have to put some effort into it and make some choices. Probably have to put yourself out there to it. But, I do believe in some regard that, some things, chance and opportunity and luck and all those philosophies about things that we put ourselves in different moments. And then some things we get lucky with. And sometimes we earn because of the effort, and sometimes a combination of both. But when I think of the concept of surrendering, I did what you guys did, which is funny because we didn't all talk to each other about this prior, but looking up definitions, and you go to the kind of the military kind of reference of surrendering usually is the first thing that comes up. And for me, I just kept kind of going down, looking like, hey, what are some other definitions of surrender that might resonate? And so one of the ones I found was abandon oneself entirely to a powerful emotion. And they said it, you could say it a different way, is give into a powerful emotion, if you will. And I like that idea of giving into, not giving up, but giving into an emotion that you have that is usually around fear, the fear of the moment I'm in, and I feel like I'm losing. And then we double down with the fear of surrendering. So now we've just kind of caused some serious levels of fear that have put us as individuals in a position of now focusing more about why did I give up and why am I not keeping fighting through it and why don't I just keep ramming my head against the same door and hoping for a different result. And I love the idea of just giving into the feeling, giving the moment of time and just saying, hey, this right here is more than I can handle, or this right here might be too much for me in the moment. And thinking of it from that beautiful point of view of looking at what am I to learn and gain from surrender versus what's it costing me. The old thought of like, then the scoreboard will be 1-0 and I'd be on the 0 side because I just surrendered. The truth might be that, I gave into this moment. I really looked with how I was feeling. I gave into that emotion that I was having, and I really had a moment to be able to learn and grow and to really just process the moment, to breathe through it, to think through it, to evaluate where I am. And as a coach, that's really where a lot of the conversations that I know you guys get in with the people you work with as well as me is really just try to unpack a little bit about what the moment might mean. And if we can detach from it being a loss and more of a moment, we can attach to, that someone else got the better of me or the moment got the better of me to more of a, what am I really going to learn and take from this? And, if we did want to use that old reference of the military side of it, with all the respect that I have for the military, it's like, we might lose a few battles, but we win the war. And I've studied enough about, kind of some of that, if you will, in life. And, you do purposefully, and again, I'm doing air quotes, you purposely lose a few to reevaluate, re-educate, reassess, and regain your strength and certainly your focus. And at the end of the day, you think of a different way to go about it and a better way to go about it. And as a result, you win. So to me, it's a wonderfully triggering word that I love we're talking about and that we're leaning into. And everybody has an immediate a gut punch sometimes, most times than not, of what even surrender, like Stu had referenced with Chris, of like, hey, you need to surrender. Chris would say that to me, and the immediate response is, what do you mean? I'm not packing it in. I'm not going to lose this. But the beauty of what Chris was really saying there is really just what really surrender means, and the emotional component, the learning component, and really all the gift that it has. So I just it's thanks for the article and a few of the reminders, but more importantly than that, Chris, this word surrender is really powerful.
Yeah, thanks, Toby. I'll connect the article to the podcast notes, but it was a surrendering versus giving up concept article, and it was from mindbodygreen.com. So we'll post that there. I'm interested in the dynamic of like men surrendering, right? Like Stu, we said it in an earlier podcast, like just society's view on men and in our generation. It's like, no, you don't, you just suck it up. You just keep going. Like there's no surrender is like, it's a weakness. Any thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, that's a big one. Acceptance to me doesn't mean that you're giving up, right? Like to that point, it just means that you're choosing peace over resistance. Like in my mind, right, I have to prioritize those things that are coming at me in life as a man, right? As a father, as a husband, as a son, as the oldest, only son, right? And the feeling of the heaviness and the responsibility to get it right. And so everything's important. I feel, and I don't think I'm the only one that shares this, but I feel like all eyes are on me, right? Whether it's all judgments are on me, all criticisms are on me. And to a large extent, I think there's some societal complexity to that creates that. But ultimately, I've also put myself in that position to be that person for my family. Right. So, to a large extent, I think the male component in this for me is the ability to be vulnerable. Right. And men tend to struggle with that vulnerability to talk out. What is that pressure, that tension that's being created? And is it worthy of being kind of surrendered? Is it a topic that you should surrender? But again, it's in that community and in that group of trusted people that I've been able to figure out what is a topic that should be surrendered and what is a topic that needs my focus. And that's with the people that love me most. Now, my ego gets in the way of a lot.
Yeah.
My ego gets in the way of feedback. My ego gets in the way of not believing that I am the answer to most problems. I want to be that person in life. So I end up taking on, my wife has a great quote, and you guys have heard it a million times. And her quote is, "Not my monkey, not my circus." And really the thought is we carry all these monkeys that were never ours. And as a man, for me, I'll just speak for me specifically, I try to solve a lot of problems with the people in my life that I love. And because I take that on, sometimes I get confused on what is mine and what is theirs, what needs to be surrendered and what needs to be intentional. And I think that comes with the territory of being a strong, confident man. A lot of times is the expectation that you have the shoulders that are broad enough to carry that burden or that pressure. And at times I think, for me, I've had to say, that's not my monkey. That's not my circus. I can't attach identity to this. And so I'm going to surrender it. If it shows back up in my life, I'll address it. But right now it's not a top priority for me because these other responsibilities are far more important. So I don't know if that answered it, Chris, but
yeah. It's interesting, man. You talk about being big, right? Like in your ego makes you kind of the center of everything. What Singer does, what I love about his podcast and just listening to how he breaks it down is deep, right? I mean, it's a little hokey. I mean, it's like universe, it's spiritual, it's deep. But what he does a great job of doing, and he's got all the stats and stuff. I don't have the stats, but like how big the universe is and how big the world, how Earth is, and the fact that it's spinning, at such mile per hour, and the fact that when I'm gone, that thing's still going to be spinning and people aren't going to remember me. And I think there's a stat or something I saw out there that your great grandkids won't even know your name. Yeah. So he doesn't do it to say, "Hey dude, you're insignificant," but he does it to say you're insignificant. He wants to show you that like you are so small. So, and you don't control. Like the universe does show up in different ways. And if you don't listen to it or surrender to it, it will keep showing up, sometimes negatively, sometimes positively. And that's what it's done for me. Like it showed up for me negatively several times when I just wasn't listening. My panic attack in the airport that I talked about previously, like that was a big marker moment for me that I had to surrender to. Like I had no answers for that. I had no answers for that. And that, Toby, you probably remember that conversation. I wanted to figure it out. I thought it was a health thing. I thought it was something I was doing wrong. And what it was the universe saying, "Hey dude, like you're not aligned with who you want to be and who you are and your values. And something's got to change or I'm going to keep sending these messages to you and who knows what they're going to be." And so that was like a big one for me. But the cool thing about all that is when I was able to do it, it was just this release of pressure. It was just this like huge exhale. And I hadn't realized like I hadn't been breathing. I've been so tight and so wrapped up in my own world and who I needed to be for everybody else but me and my family. And when and after that moment, and it scared the shit out of me, to be honest with you, like it literally scared the shit out of me where I realized I am not in control right now. If my body can do that to me and my mind can do that to me, I need to let go and figure some things out. And in that moment, it was scary, but it was so liberating for me in a way, because it just like, it put things in perspective for me. That I don't have control and that I do need to surrender and I do need to believe in me and believe in what my mark on this universe and what I'm trying to accomplish. And it was a weird kind of spiritual, I've kind of unpacked it, Tobe, with you, and it's kind of become a little bit of a spiritual unpacking for me that I went through that, because it's just, it literally has changed who I am and how I view the world and how I view my place in this world and how I view the imprint I want to put on this world. So I don't know. It was just that triggered me, Stu, when you said how big it is, because our ego makes us big and it makes us most important. But in the spirit of surrender, it's kind of like, hey, dude, you're not. And the universe is a lot bigger. Yeah. So I don't know. Any thoughts, Tobe?
Yeah, I think, thanks, Chris. That's really good. The question you had about, specifically men, and this concept of surrendering. And, just it's what you guys have said, so I don't want to, top it too much, but this whole belief system and persona about what strength is.
Yeah.
And being raised, by our dads and us being fathers, and just this whole notion of, you can't show vulnerability, Chris, to your point, or weakness in regards to giving up, going back to that kind of point I was making earlier. And what really strength is. And if we could challenge our listeners with this concept and idea of, like, maybe we need to reframe what our belief systems are about what strength really looks like, and specifically in this case, what male strength looks like. And to be able to come to a place where you're able to say, strength looks like being able to know when something that you're facing right now is bigger than you and you can't handle it. And as much as you want to, you don't have to keep putting the facade and this fakeness about you to just work through it and plow through it and not ask for help and not ask for any assistance, like, Stu, you've done with us, of like opening your heart to us and trusting us with helping you as much as you've helped me and Chris has helped you, and those kind of things. But just the willingness to really go there as an individual, first and foremost, to just open ourselves up to the fact that, maybe they will look at us as weak, or maybe they won't give us the help we need, but really to get centered in, what do I really believe is strength? And surrendering's part of my strength. That knowing that at times in my life, I'm going to need to call in reinforcements, and those people in my life that are at the ready, that have always been there for me, that have asked, how can I help you and support you? And that we're willing to just let them. Yeah. And part of that surrendering is going to be allowing that to come into our lives. And what a gift that is, and what a gift it will be in that moment. And again, to get back to it, surrendering is not, giving up. It's anything, you're going to learn a lot about yourself. You're going to learn about those people you asked help from. You're going to learn how that community of yours is and how strong it is and who those people really are when you need them most. And you're going to learn, just a lot of the practices and things that you can do moving forward to just keep on with it. And knowing that the future will be riddled with failure and surrender and winning and succeeding in life, but it'll be a culmination of it all. And to that point, Chris, you made brilliantly, it just is. We're on the path, and we are just living life as it is and as it comes to us, but not being scared to be truthful, not scared to be vulnerable, not scared to be less than strong, because that's really an interpretation that I would challenge, that maybe we're all believing what strength is in a way that we should look at it from a different point of view.
Really well said, Toby. Wow. Yeah, that really well said. I think I find myself, I told myself I wasn't going to do this on every podcast, but insert myself in the conversation. But, I think the first time, and there's been a couple of moments, but one of the most significant times where, back to your point, Weiss, about insignificance or small, is, I had a 27-year career that was phenomenal and was able to accomplish some unbelievable things in that career. And in January, when I left, there was a storyline in my mind on how that would go and what that would look like. And no matter how much reality I deal with, because I'm a pretty honest person, pretty realistic person, no matter how much my brain wanted me to believe that the company would fail miserably, that the walls would cave in because Stuart was no longer there. And that reality, right, of no, they're going to be just fine. The clock still ticks. The dollars still move. But my identity had gotten so caught up to that when you bring in the word surrender, like, that's where it came in for me. That's when the word really resonated with me. Was here I was hoping that my existence had more of a ripple effect than the reality of what it was. And I wrestled with that a lot because I didn't want, the walls to cave in. I didn't want things, but I saw myself as something different than what I was. And I go back to that book, Good to Great, when they talk about the ceramic cup and the styrofoam cup. Like, I had a conversation with a client last week that's going through a very similar change. And one of the things that they missed or their identity started to get tied to were all the perks that come with the title that you have. And if you've read that book, Good to Great, that's the analogy, is that I'm a styrofoam cup guy. The title of presidency is a ceramic cup roll. And so the idea that, however we get grounded, and I had to get to that grounded place. And the only way for me to get grounded in who Stuart was and what Stuart's purpose was to surrender all of those voices and those unexpected expectations and all the manufactured ego lies that were being built. There was no way for me to chart a path forward until I got grounded in the reality of what I needed to surrender. And most of that was built around ego for me. It was the insecurity of who am I now after a 27-year career? Who is Stuart? And so when you try to wade through that and try to figure out who that is, all of these things come in and, well, you should do this, you should do that. And that's when I was like, I can't control this anymore. I've got to let this manifest itself. So I appreciate the topic, because in my happiness is a byproduct of, like, I'll have shit pop in my head that I'll want to cause drama, or I want to, there's something that's bugging me. And that's where it also shows up. I'm like, are you serious? You're manufacturing drama just to have purpose. So surrender that. Let that go. Whatever that is, isn't even real anyway. It's in the small moments where I find it to be the most impactful. Obviously, in the grand gesture of big things that happen in life, the ability to let go, that's powerful. But for me, it's that critical eye, that self-deprecation that goes on to challenge it, to say, is this real? And if not, let it go. And more often than not, I let it go. So I don't know if that's off topic, but the concept is, I think we think surrender of like big things. It's as big as like me getting insecure before I go to a party. The other night I went to a happy hour. I was insecure as shit. And I honestly went to the bathroom, put some water on my face, looked in the mirror and said, can you just let this go? You're being ridiculous. 10 minutes into it, you're going to be the life of the party. And what happened? 10 minutes into it is the life of the party. My point being, it's those small moments that matter for me.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's also, you and I had a moment when you came up to the lake and we were down by the fire, just the reframing, right? The work, and this is the work, by the way, that we're talking about. I think we talked about it in podcast 3 or 2 or 3. And, you were still going through it. Right. And you were still dealing with kind of just, your exit and so on and so forth. And I think I gave you some feedback. I go, dude, I look at you like you did it. Like, look at you. Like you were the president and CEO of a $1 billion. I mean, how many people can say like you reached the pinnacle? And that wasn't what you were telling yourself. And I could see in that moment, we had a moment there where it was just kind of like, holy shit. And it was like that exhale. Right. That exactly. So I think it has so much to do with
that's
kind
the
of
key
the story
to
we're
community, right? Yeah. When you're talking this stuff out, and I know our listeners, whatever the topic is, whether it's your career, whether it's your marriage, whether it's stuff going on at home, parents, like all of it, it's, I think, Toby, one of the most profound quotes you've ever given in all the time I've worked with you is, it takes 2 people to see one. And I don't think I've said that perfectly, but the concept of in those low moments when I am on the verge of surrendering or need to surrender, that vulnerability in that safe space with that community, with your trusted community, is the difference between suffering and prospering in my mind. Because it was that support that pushed me. It was that conversation, Chris, exactly what it was around friendship, which we're going to talk on another podcast. And how I was framing that story in my mind about relationships and where they all went. Right. So there were 2 points in that lake where I left there with a huge exhale, but also left with surrendering some of the things that I can't control and focus. And what I shifted to were the things that I can control: mindset, attitude, health, being the one that reaches out to people to build those relationships, to care, to let people know that you care. Cause I wasn't always the best at that. So there's these things that on the backside of surrendering that are just gifts. You said I connected with somebody in high school I haven't talked to in almost 30 years. And he's going to become a client. And the conversation I had with him, how much I have changed in that just hearing myself, I was like, wow. there's these moments to validate and to bring people back in your life too.
It's awesome, man. Look at you.
Great,
Surrender.
That's great.
What you guys don't see is Stu's waving the white flag right now while we're talking. But you talked about the impact on you, where I feel like for me, I had to come to a place of surrender. I just wasn't healthy. Right. And I told you, some of the impacts of that. But more so with my kids and Joy, like I was always hovering under that line that if anything happened, I'm snapping. And I lived there for forever. I lived there for as long as I can remember. And now my kids, we were on vacation a couple weeks ago and they made a joke with Joy about, I always say this one saying when I snap, right? And I'm proud that I haven't said it yet because it's driving them nuts, but I just haven't snapped, right? Like I want to hear it. I don't know what it is. They're waiting for me. Like they're like, you're gonna say it because it's just a matter of time until you snap. So the whole vacation, they tried to piss me off and just get under my skin just so I would say it. And I still haven't said it.
Great vacation.
Great vacation, right? Everybody else had a great vacation but me. Yeah, I was getting,
let's get Dad mad.
Fun of try to get Dad mad. But what I'm most proud of, man, is like I'm so far below that line now. And Toby, you were talking about that place between stimulus and response, right? Oh, yeah. I had zero, and Dr. Les taught us that, man. He used to always teach us that, hey, slow down, and create more space there. And I just didn't know how because I needed to control everything. I needed to know the answer to everything. If someone came to me at work, I had to know, or else I thought that was me showing weakness or showing that I wasn't enough. And that's a theme of my life I've had to deal with. So that not being enough has turned to me to just want to control everything, to show everybody and anyone that I am enough. And when surrender entered it was just now I have so much space there that it's allowed me to just be more chill and enjoy the conversations and enjoy the people I'm with and be where your feet are. I was having a conversation with someone at lunch today and we talked about that, Stu, like just be where your feet are. Just the simple concept of that. And there's a component of surrender to that because you're not worried about what everything else is going on around you. He said, he heard that before, be where your feet are. And he's been really practicing it. And he was so engulfed in what everybody else was doing all the time that it was really hard for him to kind of be where his feet is. He could never really focus his attention. So now that he's been practicing, and it's like I have so much better depth in my relationships and with my conversations, and I'm more present with my kids and my wife. And surrendering for me has had such a profound effect. I don't know if I could have kept going at the pace I was going, being in control of everything. And I definitely didn't like who I was. And I think if my kids are honest and Joy's honest with you, I don't know. They dealt with me, right? But they had to always be on edge because Dad's going to snap. Don't let Dad snap, and that's just not who I wanted to be as a father, as a husband, or any role I play. So anyway, that was a huge impact for me.
That's great, Chris. Yeah. Well, one thing, let me clear up that wonderful compliment that you just gave me, Stu, a little bit earlier about Dr. Joe Courier is the one that helped me with it takes two people to understand one person. And I think in the spirit of it all, how important behavioral changes that any of us ever want to make, how feedback is a key and essential component of it. So choices that we make, beliefs that we reframe, habits we build, but we have to create great feedback. And to Dr. Joe's point, even further, that feedback-rich environment, making sure that the people around us are, they're knowledgeable of the changes we want to make. And if you're after this concept of surrender and you want to lean into it more so, just making sure that you enlist, if you will, friends and loved ones and people you trust around you to be aware of what you're up to and help be the people that will lean in and help you and pick you up where you need it and be there to listen to you and maybe not to try to fix you, but to hear you out as you reassess and take a moment. And so, you guys know, the two of you know, I've got some personal headwinds right now that we're experiencing. And so surrender is really on the forefront of my mind. And to be honest, not surrendering is on the forefront of my mind, so there's probably the opposite of it is that, not to be a hypocrite on this particular message today, but, I am battling through the idea of not wanting to lose on the personal front that we're going through right now and to win. But again, it gets back to, I think, the beauty of this conversation a lot of us is it really does wrap around control, doesn't it? I think that it really will. If we were really going to shed this all down to a word, I think that really connects with this concept, and that's the willingness, the ability, the choice, to let go of control. And it's sometimes just the perception of control, because you guys all know this, with our clients and with ourselves and our own journeys, we think we control way more than we ever do. And we try to control more than we ever could possibly control. But when things that come up, and in this case, elicit a lot of fear, that's the natural response is just trying to grab a hold of it as quickly as we can, or at least run from it or freeze from it, those responses of fear typically. And so, I think what the reminder to me for everyone out there, that when you do go through situations and you're confronted with them, which we're all not getting out of this life of ours without, look for those moments where you've done everything you can. One of my values that is near and dear to me in my heart is I was raised to be very persistent. So I don't let go of things and I really go after them. But I also have to recognize in this moment in my life and our lives and my family's life that we can't control nearly what we want to in this moment. And we need to surrender. And so we're in the eye of that right now. And it doesn't feel great. It feels as though maybe there's something we should be doing more of. I'll tell you, we can't worry anymore because we're literally worrying. And I think we're all raised to be worriers. And so the worry, though, to me is just an endless kind of tear at us. And
Right.
The truth is that we have to really just take a second. And Kath and I do this. And we just, kind of sit back and go, what do we control right now?
Yeah.
And that's the ask that I have for everyone that I ever work with, or anyone that listens to this, or for my partners on this call, is that, we for each other just remind, hey, what can you control in this moment? And what can you let go of? A la, what can you surrender to? And as much as I don't want you to telling me to surrender, because I'll be laughing at you, I do know that it's important to hear that from you, because it's a reminder to me of, hey, let's reassess what can we control and what we can't. And I put myself above anybody. If I can control it, I will be as persistent as anyone else will to try the best I can to succeed, or to get out of what I'm in, or try to win, or whatever those words are. So I love all of that, and that'll never change for me. But I can still be a hard charging, persistent, highly competitive person, and also know how to surrender. And that's what we're into right now, that's what we're confronted with. And it's real for me right now. And it's, there is some good, it really is good to just, take that breath, reassess, and really take a look at what we can and cannot control. And so it is very small what we can control, but my large window of worry is crazy. So really, when I kind of keep looking at the worry window, I look and go, man, there is just a little corner of this window that actually I have any control over. And so I'm going to really make sure I do control that. And then the rest of it, I'm going to work very, very hard to try to keep letting go of. And that's where we are right now. And again, that's why I love this topic. And it's very, very real for me on a personal side.
Thanks for sharing, Toby. I mean, I resonate a lot with what you just said from the standpoint of how I was raised and how I grew up, and certainly my backstory and the belief that I control far more than I really do. And that feeling of there's a competitor in me that also is going to always be there. And I don't like being weak. I don't like feeling weak. I don't like feeling that I don't have options, right? So to a large extent, what I have tried to work through is when I break down whatever the scenario is, in there are things that I can control, to your point, that small corner. But there's a lot of things that are outside of my control. And so that ability to kind of disconnect, and maybe surrender is, again, a very jarring word, but intentionally, right?
Yeah.
But that ability to let go, what I have to remind myself is that doesn't change my DNA at all. That's not making me less of or smaller or weaker. It's just, I keep going back to that quote. I'm choosing peace over resistance. Like that resistance to me of if when I'm fighting a battle that I cannot win, that I know I can't win, that wisdom to be able to repivot and reframe what the battle really is. Like, I think there's a lot more reframing than necessarily surrendering, right? It's understanding the turmoil or the complexity that you're in and having the ability to dissect it in a way that allows you to be you, but also doesn't let you carry the monkeys that aren't yours. And so that ability to kind of, you said the word, and I think it's been on the tip of my tongue this whole hour, but what it comes down to is that feeling of control and how badly we need that as a human race. So I appreciate the vulnerability, Toby, and more importantly, the perspective of you saying, hey, look, I'm somebody that's going out to win every time. Me too. I think all three of us are highly competitive people. I'm just suggesting that maybe there's some things in us that we can be a little more honest about what level of control we really have.
Brilliant.
Agreed.
But I thank you for sparking that.
I do too, Tobe. I tried to pull a, Luke Skywalker, Yoda, Jedi mind trick on you the other day when I was talking and checking it. And I'm like, hey, you gotta just remember, like, you've done everything you can, and you've set everybody up for success and yourself up for success.
Did you do that voice? Did you do that voice?
I saw Yoda coming.
I know. Well, you're Yoda. I'm Luke. That was my Luke Skywalker voice. So, but like, and I don't know, man. I think it's super real and vulnerable to say it's not easy. Like, a lot of times we talk about subjects on here. It's like, oh yeah, just surrender. It's a piece of cake. Like, no big deal. And then your life will be so happy. And it's like, it's not that easy. Like, life is hard, right? Like, what's the Buddhist principle? Life is suffering. Right. But it's that second arrow. Those people that know the parable, the second arrow, the first arrow is life, and it's just hard. The second arrow is life continuing, you allowing life and the struggles of life to continue to hit you with the second arrow. And I think a lot, what you were saying too in there, Tobe, got me thinking about my own journey and just the shame that also was attached to that. Right. And, oh, I should have been a better father. Oh, I should have been this. Oh, I should have been that. And instead of just surrendering to the fact that I was doing the best I could at that moment in my life. And I was trying really hard to build a career, to do that, and if I didn't like who I was, then okay, change. But like, it makes no sense to go back and just continue to beat yourself up over it and over and over. And I do that. I found myself in that loop all the time, and it doesn't serve us, right, at all. And it's just, I try to keep that parable in my head about the second arrow. And it's just, why do I keep letting this second arrow stab me instead of just looking forward? Toby uses a great analogy in our coaching practice where it's about, we're driving the car and it's the windshield. We're bringing clients. We're looking through the windshield, and the rearview mirror is small for a purpose, right? It's important, right, for us to look back behind us and understand 100%. Some themes in your life and to address those, but not to jump in the back, and go into full therapy. But ours is to look forward and to surrender to what's in front of us and to allow that to happen and for the universe to unfold in front of us. And I use that a lot and think about that a lot, Tobe, because the rearview mirror, for that constant shame game, that loop that I get myself in sometimes has not been beneficial to me. So I try to really concentrate on that front windshield and looking through that and just moving forward. So thanks for your help with that. But I appreciate your vulnerability in that, buddy.
You got it, buddy. No worries.
Any last kind of thoughts, guys, as we wrap this up?
Yeah. The only thing I would share is our stories are our stories, how we've navigated life, the things that have come into our life. I think, one of the things that people or listeners may hear is the outcomes of these things, right? From the standpoint of, we didn't have the car crash, a lightning bolt, but we did shift careers. We did make a big change. And I think that's a very dramatic, outcome, for this topic and a lot of these topics. I think what it really comes down to, and what I want to emphasize just on my time here, is the small changes that can be made internally to to surrender to the proper things, but to stay very much aligned to the goals that you've set. And to Chris's point, it's an inside out job. And a lot of the things that we're talking about aren't about quitting your job tomorrow, starting a new career next week. Like, Chris and I and Toby, these have been, I'm 27 years, almost 28 years into a career. There was a lot of time and a lot of counsel from the community to make that decision. But along the way, those 27 years, I think without knowing it, I gave control up a lot to better myself and to move myself forward in my career, my chosen career path. And so again, it's, in a time like the world is right now, where there's a lot of tension, a lot of career challenges, a lot of, and so, I think it would be a shame if our listeners thought, well, what TruePath's suggesting is that you just throw it all to the wind and start something new. And it's like, couldn't be further from the truth. I'm more encouraging you to look inside. It's not about the job, and it's usually not about the company or the leader. It's about you and making sure that you're doing the work for you to serve you for the rest of your life, not just in this career or the next, but who you are as a human. So all of these topics are in the spirit of helping someone become their ideal self, to do the work, to have the freedom of knowing themselves. And how you apply this to your career and to your marriage and to your things. It's really about those small tweaks, not big grand gestures, my opinion.
Love it. Yeah, the coach in me would just, as a kind of a close on my front, would be to just build on what you just said, Stu, brilliantly, by the way, is, think about that word surrender. Think about how that feels. So I say think and feel. I mean, feel how that feels rather than think about how that feels. Do you believe it's losing and choosing to lose? Do you believe it's giving up? So think about it from a different point of view. I ask you to just take a look at there's a wonderful exercise, a tissue box, and how you could have half the room look at one way and the other way, and it's a tissue box. But one group sees it a different, they would describe it differently, and another side of the group would say, oh, it's got a hole in it and there's tissues out there. Like, what are you talking about? That's not a tissue box. And the perspective of it all is you can look at the exact same thing and think of it in a different way. And what I'm just challenging everyone to think about is that if surrender is a word that gets your attention and piques your interest or also scares you, that's a wonderful word to keep leaning into. And what I ask of you is just think about what that would mean and what that would look like if you took on this idea of surrendering to some of the things that you don't control, surrendering to these moments in time that are bigger than you and you can't handle it all by yourself. And this opportunity that I think you have to show strength, to know when you need something more than what you have, that's strength. That's leadership. That's somebody on the path of really trying to become their best self. And for me, if this is one of those words and concepts that gets your attention, then let's just keep leaning into it and keep asking yourself some good questions about what you need. And ultimately, you get to how you will be able to surrender. But my biggest entry point is first, let's figure out what you believe about it. So that's what I would want people to really chew on and think about.
Yeah, I love that, man. There is definitely a hokiness behind the word, right? Like, surrender. And it's there's some spirituality behind it. There's a lot behind it. When you said feeling that word, Toby, like I read immediately just kind of, again, that breath, that exhale. And that's the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that. I looked up Michael Singer again. I wanted to give him, because he's been my kind of guru on this path. And one of the things he talks about is experiencing inner peace. And through surrender, one can achieve a state of inner peace and freedom. When people stop resisting what is and instead accept it, they find a profound sense of liberation and tranquility. And that's what I feel. That's what I've felt. And I would go down. This is the journey, right? This is the work, to what Toby said. If it resonates with you, go after and get curious about it. So, hey, we'll close up there. Again, thank you for joining us on the path. Remember, every journey is unique and every step you take shapes that journey. Keep exploring, stay curious, and give yourself grace as you forge your path. Until next time, stay true to yourself and keep walking the path. Have a great day, everybody.